I want to tell you about the look on my brother's other wife's face when she opened her front door and saw me standing there. She didn't know who I was, but I knew everything about her. Her name, her address, the school her kids went to, the neighborhood she thought was safe from our family's chaos. I had driven 4 hours to get to that door. She said, "Can I help you?" I said, "Yes. My name is Rachel. David is my brother, and I think you and I need to talk. I need to back up. My brother David is 5 years older than me and has been the golden son of our family since before I understood what that meant. I was the one who studied, worked, built something quietly with no applause. David was the one who showed up at Christmas and got the longest hug. Our father got sick 3 years ago. I lived 40 minutes away and visited every week. Medications, appointments, paperwork. David lived 2 states away and called on birthdays. Then 18 months ago, David moved back, said it was for Dad, quit his job, moved into the house, became suddenly and visibly devoted. My father, who had always loved David with the specific blindness some parents have for their most difficult child, told me on the phone that David had really grown up. I wanted to believe it, but something was wrong, and I felt it before I could name it. David started controlling who visited and when. Dad was tired, he'd say. Dad had a bad night. I was scheduling time with my own father through my brother like he was a receptionist. Then Dad started reversing decisions he'd been certain about for years. Property he'd promised a cousin was suddenly off the table. Investments he'd explained to me carefully were suddenly restructured. When I asked him directly, he got confused and said David had explained it was better this way. I started calling Dad at odd hours, early mornings before David was awake. And in those calls, my father was different, clearer, more like himself, sometimes frightened in ways he couldn't articulate. He said once at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday that he felt like he was forgetting things he shouldn't be forgetting. Then he caught himself and said, "Never mind." David says, "It's just the medication." I recorded every call from that night forward. 2 months of recordings. My father's voice getting quieter and more uncertain. References to documents he couldn't remember signing. A mention of a lawyer named Patterson, who had come to the house twice. Dad called him David's guy. I hired my own lawyer. She found Patterson in 3 days. He and David had prepared a power of attorney document 6 weeks after David moved back. My father had signed it, the same father who was on 3 medications affecting cognition and telling me at 11 p.m. that he was forgetting things he shouldn't forget. I kept recording, kept visiting on David's schedule, smiling at Sunday dinners, watching my brother perform devotion for one sick old man. Then Dad called me on a Thursday morning sounding scared. He said David had brought someone to walk through the house the night before. Like a buyer. When Dad asked about it, David told him not to worry. Dad's voice dropped to almost nothing. He said, "Rachel, I don't think everything is fine." I said, "Dad, I know. I'm handling it." I started looking at David's life with different eyes. My lawyer flagged an LLC David had formed. The LLC had made a down payment on a house 4 hours away 2 years ago. I pulled the property record. Her name was Melissa. David had been with her for 6 years. 2 children, 4 and 6 years old. A house, a life, a whole parallel world my brother had been maintaining while performing devoted son back home. He needed the inheritance to keep both lives funded and separate. I drove 4 hours on a Saturday morning and knocked on Melissa's door. She was younger than I expected, tired the way mothers of small children are tired. She looked at me with the wariness of a woman who had learned to be careful about unexpected visitors. I told her my name. I told her David was my brother. I watched her face decide very quickly how much it could afford to show. She let me in. We sat at her kitchen table for 3 hours. Melissa was not a villain in this story. She was a woman who had been handed a carefully constructed version of her own life. When I laid out the recordings, the power of attorney, the property transfers, the timeline, she went very still first. The way people go still when something they half knew is finally confirmed. Then she opened a kitchen drawer and put a folder on the table in front of me. She had been keeping records too. Deposits from accounts she didn't recognize. A life insurance policy taken out in my father's name with Melissa listed as beneficiary. My brother had taken out a life insurance policy on our dying father for his secret second family. I called my lawyer from Melissa's driveway. Then I sent David a single text message. I said, "Come to Dad's house tomorrow morning. We need to talk about the power of attorney." He replied in 4 minutes. Said, "Sure, no problem. Everything okay?" I said, "Yes. Just a few things to sort out." He had no idea. David arrived at 10 the next morning, relaxed, coffee in hand, the practiced ease of a man who has been managing people successfully for a long time. He saw me at the kitchen table, He saw Dad in his chair. He smiled and said, "What's going on?" I put my phone on the table and pressed play. The first recording was from 6 weeks after he moved back. His voice and Patterson's discussing the power of attorney, discussing what could be moved and how quickly, discussing my father the way people discuss a problem to be managed, rather than a person to be loved. David's smile didn't disappear immediately. It took about 12 seconds. I watched it happen in real time, the slow drain of it, the recalculation behind his eyes, the moment he understood exactly how long I had been listening. He said, "Rachel, this isn't what it sounds like." I played the next one. Dad's voice, 11 p.m., frightened, saying he felt like he was forgetting things he shouldn't be forgetting. Then David's voice the next morning, bright and cheerful, telling Dad the doctor said the memory stuff was totally normal, nothing to worry about. Dad was very quiet in his chair, looking at David the way you look at something you raised and loved and are now seeing clearly for the first time. David switched tactics fast. He looked at Dad and said, "Dad, you know I did all of this for us, for the family. Rachel has never understood how much pressure I've been under keeping everything together." Dad said quietly, "What pressure, David?" "Rachel has been here every week for 3 years. You came back 18 months ago. What exactly have you been carrying?" David looked at me. Something shifted, the salesman giving way to something uglier. He said, "You have no idea what you've done. You've destroyed this family over illegal recordings and a folder full of speculation." I slid Melissa's folder across the table. I said, "Her name is Melissa. 6 years, 2 kids, a house your LLC bought using Dad's future estate as collateral, and a life insurance policy on Dad with her name as sole beneficiary. I sat with her yesterday for 3 hours. She's already retained a lawyer." What happened next I was not fully prepared for. David's coffee cup hit the counter so hard it cracked. He stood there for about 5 seconds completely still, and then something broke open in him. He grabbed his phone and started dialing, pacing the kitchen, running one hand through his hair over and over. I heard it ring twice and go to voicemail. He dialed again. "Voicemail," he said, "Patterson, call me right now. Call me back, we have a problem. Call me back, immediately." His voice was cracking at the edges, the smoothness completely gone, replaced by something raw and desperate I had never heard from him in my life. He tried 2 more numbers. Nobody picked up. He turned back to me and he was not the golden son anymore. He was a man standing in the middle of a house he thought he had already won, realizing every exit was sealed. He said, "Rachel, you don't understand what you've just done. You don't understand the position you've put this family in. If you had just trusted me, if you had just stayed out of it, everything would have been fine. Everyone would have been taken care of." Dad's voice came from the chair behind us. Quiet, clear, final. He said, "Everyone except me, David." David looked at our father. Then he looked at me. Then he walked out, got in his car, and sat in the driveway for 11 minutes. I watched from the window, both hands on the steering wheel, staring at nothing, like a man doing the math on a problem that has no answer that works in his favor. Then he drove away. He hasn't been back. David was removed as power of attorney that week. The property transfers reversed. Patterson lost his license. The insurance policy flagged and investigated. David's wife at home found out when 2 separate lies collapsed at the same time, and he didn't have enough hands to hold either one together. He called me once after everything was done, said I had destroyed the family. I let him finish. Then I said, "David, you needed someone who wasn't paying attention. You chose the wrong sister." He hung up first, which told me everything about how it actually ended. 3 weeks later, a letter arrived from Melissa. She thanked me, said she was sorry about my family. I wrote back one line. I said, "Don't be sorry. You helped me get him." Last I heard, David has no job, no lawyer, no access to Dad, and 2 women who changed their locks the same week. The deed to Dad's house has my name on it now. Dad handled it quietly one morning with his real lawyer, the one David never knew existed. He spent 18 months trying to take everything. I spent 18 months paying attention. Funny how that works.